Everyone in the bank lobby went quiet when he walked up to the counter, dressed in casual clothes, calm demeanor, holding nothing but a bank card and ID. No one paid much attention at first, not until the manager was called. That's when everything began to unravel, and exactly 7 minutes later, the manager's world turned upside down. Aaron Matthews wasn't the kind of man who liked attention. He believed in letting results speak louder than appearance. But that morning, he walked into his own bank like any other customer, without a driver, without a suit, and without security. Just a regular man with a purpose, to withdraw a modest amount of cash. The bank teller glanced at him, her eyes flickering from his face to his worn-out sneakers. She looked tired, disinterested even, but Aaron gave her the benefit of the doubt. He smiled politely and passed over his card and ID. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please," he said. She barely looked up. "How much?" "Just a few thousand." Her fingers paused over the keyboard. Her eyes flicked up again, more alert this time. "From this account?" "Yes." Another glance at his ID, then a longer pause. Something was off, but Aaron stayed patient. He understood people made mistakes, but what happened next went far beyond a mistake. "I'll need to speak to my manager," she said abruptly. He didn't argue. Instead, he stepped aside, watching her walk briskly to the office at the back of the lobby. A man in a neatly pressed navy suit emerged moments later, adjusting his tie like he was preparing for a courtroom battle. His name tag read, "Stephen Clark, branch manager." Stephen walked up with an air of authority, his smile thin and practiced. "Sir, I understand you're attempting to make a large withdrawal?" Aaron nodded. "Yes. Is there a problem?" "Well," Stephen said, with a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes, "we do have procedures. You understand? Fraud, identity theft. Happens more than you'd think." Aaron kept calm. "I'm happy to comply with any verification you need." Stephen took the ID from the teller, glanced at it, then handed it back to Aaron. "This ID doesn't match our records." That stopped Aaron cold. "Excuse me?" "I said," Stephen repeated, slower this time. "Your information doesn't match. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Aaron stared at him, stunned. "You haven't even checked the account details." Stephen's tone shifted from formal to firm. "We reserve the right to deny service if we suspect fraudulent activity." Other customers were starting to glance over, sensing tension. Aaron felt a flush rise in his cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from disbelief. "I own this bank," he said quietly but firmly. Stephen laughed, a full, loud laugh that made two people near the entrance glance over. "Oh, really? You own it? Let me guess. You're testing us, right? Is this some kind of social experiment?" Aaron didn't answer. He was already pulling out his phone. Stephen folded his arms, shaking his head. "Sir, if you don't leave, I'll have to call security." "You won't need to," Aaron said calmly, pressing a contact on his phone. It rang once. "Robert?" Aaron said into the receiver. "Can you join me at the Springview branch? There's a situation." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He just stepped aside and waited. Stephen leaned over to the teller and whispered, "Keep an eye on him." Aaron heard it, but said nothing. Exactly 7 minutes passed before a sleek black car pulled up outside. Out stepped a man in his mid-40s, holding a slim briefcase, moving with precision and purpose. He didn't stop at the security desk. He walked straight to Aaron and greeted him with a short nod. "Mr. Matthews." Stephen frowned. "Who's this?" Robert looked directly at him. "I'm Chief Operating Officer of this bank. Stephen's smugness flickered. Robert turned to Aaron. "What's going on, sir?" Aaron gestured calmly. "Mr. Clark here refused to verify my identity or allow me access to my own account. He claimed the ID didn't match." Robert's expression hardened. He turned to Stephen, who now looked pale. "You denied service to our CEO?" he asked quietly, yet intensely. Stephen opened his mouth, but words didn't come. Robert turned back to Aaron. "Would you like to handle this personally, or shall I?" Aaron looked around the room. Every eye was on them now. Some customers pretending not to stare, others outright gawking. "I think it's time for a conversation," Aaron said. "In his office." Stephen looked like he might be sick. But this wasn't just about firing someone. It was about what happened before that. What Stephen had said to the teller earlier, the assumptions he made, and the conversations that happened behind closed doors. Because Aaron already knew this wasn't an isolated incident. And now, he was going to uncover all of it. Stephen closed the office door behind him with trembling hands. His polished confidence had evaporated. He no longer looked like a man in control of a bank, just someone who had overplayed his authority and was about to face consequences he never imagined. Aaron took a seat across the desk without invitation. Robert remained standing, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Stephen shifted uncomfortably, trying to find his voice. "I had no idea who you were," he finally said. "If I'd known—" "That's the problem," Aaron cut in, his tone sharp but calm. "You shouldn't have to know. Every customer who walks in here deserves respect, not suspicion, especially not based on how they look." Stephen's eyes flicked between them, looking for sympathy, some opening, anything. "I've worked here for 11 years, he said. "My track record speaks for itself. I've brought in high net worth clients, raised quarterly deposits, expanded loan products." "And how many people did you turn away in the process?" Aaron asked. Stephen hesitated. Aaron leaned forward slightly. "You didn't just deny me service. You made a judgment. On my clothes, on my skin. You laughed in my face when I told you who I was." Robert added quietly, "And this isn't the first time we've had complaints about this branch." Stephen's head shot up. "Complaints?" Aaron nodded slowly. "We've received 6 formal complaints in the past 8 months, all flagged for racial bias or unprofessional conduct. 4 of those were dismissed before they ever reached corporate." "I didn't see anything come through," Stephen said quickly. "You wouldn't have," Robert replied, "because the reports were buried, likely by someone in upper management, maybe someone you're connected to." Stephen's face paled further. He looked caught, like someone trying to recall which lies were told and which weren't. Aaron didn't blink. "That stops today?" Stephen straightened in his chair. "So what, you're going to fire me on the spot?" Aaron looked at Robert. "Draft the immediate termination notice. Full internal review of all branch activity over the past 2 years. Freeze manager-level access to internal systems until further notice." Robert gave a firm nod and stepped out to begin the process. Stephen slumped. His hands clenched into fists, then opened again. "You don't understand the pressure of running this branch. The numbers we're expected to meet. The clientele we deal with." Aaron stood. "You think I don't understand pressure? I built this institution from scratch. I've dealt with pressure every day for the last 20 years, on a scale you haven't even imagined. You had every opportunity to treat people with decency. You chose arrogance." Stephen didn't respond. He stared at the desk like it held the answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. Aaron reached for the door, then paused. "And one more thing. When you laughed at me, that told me everything I needed to know about how you lead." The door closed behind him, leaving Stephen alone. Outside the office, a quiet buzz of whispers spread across the lobby. Robert had returned, flanked by 2 internal audit officers from headquarters who had arrived during the meeting. The transition was immediate. Stephen's access badge was deactivated. His company laptop was collected. A letter was placed on his desk to sign. Aaron didn't wait around for a public scene. He returned to the counter, the same one where he'd been denied earlier. The teller was still there, though now visibly shaken. She stood up nervously. I didn't know," she stammered. "You didn't need to know," Aaron said. "You just needed to do your job professionally." She nodded quickly, almost tearfully. Aaron glanced at the screen. "Go ahead and process my withdrawal." As requested, her hands trembled as she typed. Behind him, customers were watching in stunned silence. Not one person had expected what they saw that morning. After the transaction was complete, Aaron took his receipt and thanked the teller. Then, instead of heading straight for the exit, he turned toward the waiting area. A woman in her late 50s, wearing a floral blouse and holding a cane, sat there with her bag clutched in her lap. She had been watching the entire time. Aaron walked up to her gently. "I saw you here when I came in. You've been waiting a long time." She nodded. "They said my account had a problem, that they couldn't help me without a manager." Aaron gestured to one of the auditors nearby. "This woman needs assistance, immediately." The auditor nodded and walked over. Aaron turned back to her. "If this bank hasn't treated you properly, that changes today." Her eyes welled with tears. "Thank you, young man. I didn't know who you were, but I'm glad you're here." Aaron smiled for the first time that morning. As he stepped outside into the cool daylight, his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant popped up. "HQ notified. Press wants a comment. Internal PR team is on standby." Aaron stared at the message, then pocketed the phone. There'd be fallout, of course. Stories like this didn't stay inside 4 walls. But he wasn't worried about the headlines. He was thinking about the culture. Because this wasn't just about firing a manager. It was about rebuilding trust. And just when he thought the morning was over, his phone rang again. It was someone he hadn't expected to hear from. A name that carried weight in the industry. And the voice on the other end wasn't calling to offer support. It was calling to warn him. "Aaron," the voice said carefully, "you stirred up more than you realize. That branch manager? He's not just some lone actor. He's part of a much bigger game." Aaron's expression changed. "Go on." Aaron paced slowly outside the bank, the phone pressed to his ear, his calm exterior tightening as the voice on the other end continued. "I'm telling you, Stephen Clark didn't act alone," the caller repeated. "He was protected, strategically placed. There's a network within your mid-tier management that's been quietly operating their own agenda. This wasn't just about denying you a withdrawal. This was a message." A test. Aaron stopped walking. "A test?" he said slowly. "Yes, and you passed it. But you've also made enemies now. Real ones. People who were comfortable hiding behind the system. You've forced them into the light." The line crackled slightly before the caller added, "You need to be careful who you trust from here on out." Aaron exhaled slowly, letting the information settle. He thanked the caller, an old contact from a rival institution, and ended the call. He knew what came next. This wasn't just about fixing a single branch. It was about purging something deeper. Later that afternoon, Aaron called an emergency leadership meeting. No assistants, no junior staff, just his inner circle. 7 executives who each oversaw a different arm of the bank's operations. Marketing, risk, loans, technology, compliance, regional management, and human resources. He didn't waste time. "I want a full audit on all regional branch managers," he said. "Every complaint, every employee transfer, every incident flagged in customer surveys. Go back 5 years." There were glances exchanged around the table. One of the executives, Lena Cho, VP of Compliance, spoke up. "That's a massive undertaking." "Then start now," Aaron replied. "I don't care how clean their numbers look on paper. I want to know how they treat people when no one's watching." Lena hesitated. "What exactly are we looking for?" Aaron looked at her, firm and direct. "Abuse of power, bias, patterns in hiring and firing, any indication that someone's protecting their own inner circle, and especially anyone connected to Stephen Clark's rise." It wasn't long before the first red flags surfaced. A few days later, Robert entered Aaron's office holding a printed report, his face tight with concern. "There's something you should see." He placed the document on the desk. Aaron scanned it quickly. Stephen Clark had been recommended for his branch manager role by a senior executive named Alan Creed, a regional director based out of Chicago. Alan's signature appeared on more than a dozen promotions in the past 3 years, all coincidentally involving candidates with identical profiles. Same educational background, same social circles, same exclusionary patterns. Robert pointed to a section in bold. "Notice anything strange?" Aaron's eyes narrowed. "Every one of these hires came from the same private business forum." "Exactly. It's an unofficial old boys club. They sponsor each other's careers quietly, and they've built a protective bubble. Stephen was just the one who got caught. The rest are still embedded in the system." Aaron pushed the report aside. "Pull Alan Creed's personnel file. I want to see who brought him in, how fast he rose, and who he protected." By the end of the week, the truth was undeniable. Alan had been operating a shadow hiring structure for years, building a team that answered more to him than to the actual bank leadership. They weren't the majority, but they had power, especially in middle and upper middle management, enough to influence branch culture across entire regions, enough to decide who got promoted, who got silenced, who got denied. Aaron called Alan directly. No assistant, no preamble. "Alan," he said calmly, "we need to talk." Alan sounded unbothered. "Of course, I heard about the incident. Unfortunate situation. I was just reviewing the reports." "Good. Then you already know what's coming." A pause. "What exactly do you mean?" "I know what you've been building," Aaron said. "I know about the forum, the hand-picked hires, the buried complaints. You tried to turn this institution into a private club. You're done here." Alan chuckled. "Now hold on. I've brought in more capital than any other regional director in the past decade. You're not going to throw all that away over one unfortunate misstep." Aaron didn't raise his voice. "This isn't about one mistake. It's about the culture you've created. You made space for people like Stephen Clark to thrive." Silence. Then Alan's tone shifted. "You really think you can cut out a system this embedded? You're not just talking about me. You'd have to gut an entire layer of this company." Aaron leaned back. "Then I will." The call ended. A new battle had begun. The following Monday, Aaron walked into the HR boardroom, where stacks of records were waiting. Names, transfers, anonymous reports, old emails, whistleblower tips that never reached the top. With Lena and Robert by his side, he began building a new framework, one that didn't rely on referrals or internal favoritism, but on accountability and transparency. The task was enormous, but necessary. While they worked, an unexpected message came through. A handwritten letter from a former employee who had quit 3 years ago after being repeatedly passed over for promotions by Stephen Clark's team. It read, "I never thought someone at the top would care enough to fix it. Thank you for showing me I was right to speak up, even if no one listened then. Maybe now, someone will." Aaron read it twice. There it was, the real reason this fight mattered. But just when things seemed to be moving forward, Robert knocked on his door again, this time with a look of urgency. "We've got a problem," he said. "What now?" "It's Alan. He's not going quietly. He's reaching out to major shareholders, framing your actions as unstable. He's trying to undermine your position." Aaron didn't flinch. "Then we handle it head on." Robert lowered his voice. "There's more. We traced some internal messages. He's already contacted 3 other regional directors. They're planning something. Fast." Aaron nodded slowly. "Call an emergency board meeting. Full disclosure. I'll speak directly." The next day, in a glass-walled room high above the city, Aaron stood before the board, holding the evidence in his hand. He laid out the entire story: quiet corruption, systemic discrimination, and the toxic network built right under their noses. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't ask for sympathy. He simply told the truth. When he finished, the room was silent. One of the older board members, known for being stern and cautious, finally spoke. "This could shake the entire foundation." Aaron nodded. "It should. Because if we don't fix this, we don't deserve to lead this institution. We lose our credibility. We lose the trust of our people." Another board member asked, "And if Alan fights back?" "He already is," Aaron said, "and he will continue. But I'm not backing down. This is about more than my title. It's about what we stand for." A slow nod, then another. The board voted. Unanimous. Alan Creed's contract was terminated within 24 hours. His team began unraveling. One by one, others were either removed or resigned under pressure. But the fallout was just beginning. Because someone leaked the internal review, and now the media had caught wind of it. Headlines started to swirl. CEO cleans house after racial profiling incident. But was it enough? Inside the bank's hidden network, how one man quietly controlled half the branches. And then, a reporter showed up outside Aaron's building, holding something that would change everything. It wasn't about Alan anymore. It was about what Aaron had missed. Aaron stepped through the revolving doors of headquarters, expecting a flood of messages and internal updates. Instead, a reporter was waiting, calm, composed, and holding a manila envelope. "Aaron Whitford?" the reporter asked, already certain of the answer. "Yes." "I'm not here to make trouble," she said. "I just want you to see this. You've been trying to clean house, but something bigger's been hiding underneath." She handed him the envelope and walked away. No questions, no tape recorder. Just a cryptic warning and a quiet exit. Aaron took the envelope up to his office. Inside were printed documents, transaction logs, internal emails, and something else. Whistleblower testimonies. But these weren't about Stephen Clark or Alan Creed. They were about someone much closer. His own chief operating officer, Cheryl Dalton, Aaron's second in command, trusted for over a decade. the person who had helped him scale the bank from its early days. According to the documents, Cheryl had known about the regional favoritism, and not only had she failed to stop it, but she'd also protected key players from termination. In two separate whistleblower testimonies, employees claimed Cheryl quietly intervened to shield Stephen Clark after prior warnings. One even claimed she blocked an internal investigation. Aaron sat in stunned silence. He had trusted Cheryl with nearly every major decision in the last 5 years. But it wasn't just disappointment. It was betrayal. Not only had she undermined him, she had jeopardized the very mission they built together. He called an immediate meeting with Lena, Robert, and the bank's legal counsel. The documents were reviewed thoroughly and verified against the bank's internal records. The connections held. Robert looked shaken. If this is true, she's the reason most of this was able to survive for so long. While we were busy chasing the middle, the top was compromised. Lena added, we have to confront her, privately. No leaks, not until we're sure of every detail. That evening, Aaron asked Cheryl to meet him in his office. She walked in with her usual calm, unaware that everything had shifted. "Close the door," he said quietly. She did, taking a seat across from him. "What's this about?" Aaron slid the documents across the desk. "You tell me." She scanned the papers slowly. Her expression didn't change much, only a faint tightening of the jaw. When she looked up, there was no denial in her eyes. "I did what I thought was best for stability," she said. "Alan brought in performance. Those regions were profitable. I couldn't risk exposing the bias without risking investor confidence." Aaron kept his voice steady. "So you protected the wrong people. For numbers, for growth," she corrected. "You wanted expansion. You pushed us hard. I made choices that allowed us to scale without friction." He stood up, unable to sit still. "At the cost of our values? We wouldn't even be here if I hadn't—" Aaron raised his hand, stopping her. "That's not how this works. Not anymore." There was a long pause. Finally, Cheryl said, "So what now?" "You're done here," Aaron said. "Effective immediately. Legal will handle the transition. You'll resign quietly, and we won't press charges if you cooperate fully with the internal review." She nodded once, slow and resigned. "You always were the idealist, and you always thought pragmatism was an excuse to bend the rules," Aaron replied. When she left, the weight in the room shifted. It was done. The betrayal was real, but so was the clarity. For the first time in weeks, Aaron felt like the institution had a real shot at becoming what it was supposed to be. But things didn't quiet down. In fact, the next few days were some of the most intense of his career. The press exploded with headlines. "Top bank executive resigns amid scandal. CEO continues sweeping reforms." "Racial profiling sparks corporate reckoning. One CEO's stand against his own system." From disrespected customer to revolution leader, inside Aaron Whitford's bold move. Clients responded in waves. Some withdrew in protest. But many more reached out in support, especially minority business owners, families who had faced discrimination in silence, and former employees who had once given up hope. One message stood out above the rest. "I left banking because I never thought someone like me could survive in this system. But because of you, I'm reconsidering. Thank you for proving it's possible." Meanwhile, Aaron launched the Transparency Rebuild Initiative, a first-of-its-kind program that empowered anonymous reporting directly to his office, required implicit bias training at all levels, and made demographic data on hiring and promotions publicly accessible. But the most powerful moment came a month later. Aaron returned to the same branch where it all started, this time for a surprise visit. Word spread quickly. Employees stood up straighter. Clients watched with curiosity. But Aaron didn't head to the manager's office. He walked straight to the waiting area, where an older gentleman was sitting quietly with an envelope in his hand. Aaron sat beside him. "Good morning," he said with a warm nod. The man looked at him in disbelief. "You're the CEO, aren't you?" Aaron smiled. "Yes, and you're the reason I'm here. Every person who was treated like they didn't belong in this building. That stops now." The man held up his envelope. "I was here to close my account. I've been with this bank for 34 years. But the way things were going..." Aaron looked him in the eye. "Give us one more chance. Not just for you, but for everyone who's ever felt invisible." The man lowered the envelope. "All right, one more." As Aaron walked back out, a reporter nearby called out, "Do you think this changes anything?" He paused, thought about it. "It already has," he said. And then he left, not with fanfare but with purpose, the kind that echoes louder than headlines. Because sometimes the most powerful stories don't end with victory. They end with change.